Jake, thank you very much for being here with us today. I'm so excited.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's not every day I get the opportunity to talk to kind of disparate parts of the Overwatch community. So I'm excited to connect more with the French fans.
Yeah, that's good. You know, I've already received all the French who have played in OWL. I've received also Koreans, a Belgium, a Spanish, a Swedish, a Danish, and a German. But you're my first American, Jake, and I'm so glad it's you. So welcome to the Bazaar. That's the name of my talk show.
All right, well, I'm excited. I have to represent my country well, I guess.
Do you feel pressure? Or it's going to be fine?
I think I'll be okay.
Yeah. You like interview?
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of interviews. I've always been like more comfortable than a lot of esports players with doing interviews. So I think that kind of snowballs. Most teams players didn't want to do it, and I didn't mind. So I got a lot of experience that way. And now I'm pretty comfortable.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a good one. So, Jake, we are going to talk about your team, your lifelong team, Houston Outlaws. We're going also to talk about your comeback in OWL and your caster experience as well. But I would like to start with the 2017 World Cup, the first real edition with pro players. This World Cup, you know, I had the chance to be in Los Angeles at the BlizzCon, and that was my very first big event, and this is where I saw you for the first time. Jake, what memories do you keep of this World Cup with Team USA and of this very close game against South Korea?
I mean, I remember definitely some key moments in the game, like lessons learned, mistakes made that I could do better for next time. Funnily enough, I don't really remember much of the good moments. I think my memory of matches is always about the mistakes I've made. Unless if we didn't win, at least maybe a match we won, I'll think about the good things. But if we lost, even if I made good plays and had good moments, I'll still be thinking about the mistakes. And so that, funnily enough, that's what sticks with me. Although it's kind of sad, I guess that's the truth. So I remember various misplays I made throughout the match, and moments maybe we could have won if I had played better. But I also remember it was a big experience for me that right after we lost, the next day, there was still the practice area for all the teams. And, obviously, like a lot of the teams, no one was there for, teams who have been eliminated like us. And none of my teammates, they were hanging out at BlizzCon, trying to make the most of the event after being eliminated. But one of my biggest memories is I came to the practice area after we got eliminated and then just practiced all day and played ranked and played just training stuff and just kept practicing. And I remember that's how I met a lot of the Korean players on Team South Korea, because they saw me like the only player from my team still there practicing and stuff. And for me, that was a big moment, because I had thoughts, obviously at that moment, for like the last 2 months or something, I was totally focused on the World Cup, winning, trying to beat South Korea. But then it was an important moment for me to like be able to move on from that goal and still be focused on the future, and accept that we had lost, and then just be right back to practicing. And I think that like mindset has served me really well in competing, where just moving on from defeats and mistakes and like getting right back at practicing and trying to become better. So for me, I think that was probably, it's kind of a strange memory, but it's probably the most important one for me from that time.
So that's the way you enjoyed the show after the defeat. I mean, that's the way you enjoyed the event, practicing more and playing ranked.
Yeah. I was backstage and in the practice area. I don't know. I think, I think that's always how I've been. I think that's like the way you kind of have to be as a professional. Like you're going to take losses. And I mean, I know that pretty well from my professional career as well. It's funny this year, we're winning so much that even that's more of a strange experience to me. So I have to get used to it, I guess.
And did you at least remember the crowd? Because I was very impressed by the American public.
Yeah, the crowd, the stage, the arena, playing live. I mean, it was a pretty incredible experience. For me, that was like my second time competing on land. Like my first time was the qualifier in Santa Monica, and then my second time was at BlizzCon. But I think I was pretty confident that I could like play professionally after that, because even with that crowd and it was so intense, and there's such an incredible arena. Usually you don't see that kind of 360 setup in esports. So it was awesome, but really intense. But it didn't bother me. I felt like I played even better in that circumstance, and I just wanted to keep getting back at that, playing in front of the crowd, in a stadium and stuff. So for me, it was another motivating factor. Like, I guess, nobody thinks they're the type of person to choke, but I guess you never really know unless you actually, play in those high pressure environments. So experiencing it and playing really well in that environment was definitely for me like really good for my morale, motivation going forward, feeling like I wanted to keep going with playing professionally.
Yeah, and the next step, the OWL. And at this time, during this World Cup, you were also the captain of Team USA. The captain is not necessarily the best player, but he's bound to be a leader, an example for the rest of the player. Jake, what is a good captain to you?
For me, I think, the thing about esports is that the not only is the game, so different from traditional sports, but the community, the people who make it up, the people who end up becoming professional players are so different from, the traditional stereotype of like athletes and competitors. And yet they're just as competitive and just as intense, just in their own way, in a different way. So for me, I think being a captain is about, channeling, those players' best motivations and keeping everyone together on the same page, motivated, but doing it in a way that doesn't alienate, those players. It's not quite like, just like the cheering and hype and getting everyone excited. Some players play better when they're a little bit more calm, and some players want the hype, and I think everyone has like a slightly different window that they want to play in. So I think the captain's job is to kind of find a place for the team to be at that works for everyone, that where the overall team is the most effective.
Yeah, you have to adapt.
I think
on every situation, right?
Yeah, like making sure the team's energy is in the right place overall.
And do you like that? Do you like having responsibilities, influence in a team?
I don't know if I like it. I think I've always been the type of person who just, like if nobody else does it, then I'll step up. And I think in esports, there's not too many people who are willing to step up and take a role, like a leadership role like that. So I guess I feel like it ends up being me a lot of the time. But I think, I think it would be kind of nice to be a player who, just is like a role player and just does their job and isn't expected to contribute in that way. That could be nice too. But I know that it's something that I'm good at. So maybe more comfortable than most players are with that type of role. So I know it's sort of inevitable that I'm going to end up doing it to some extent. But I think also on really great teams, it's not just one player, the leader, like running the show. I think that you can't really succeed at the highest level with that model. It just works for like a short term. You need multiple players contributing, multiple players being leaders in their own way. That's how I see like our team now. I don't see it as, having a quote unquote captain. I think there's lots of players who contribute to the morale and the focus and the mental energy of the team, and they all do it in their own way. So now I just see myself as like somebody who contributes, but not as like a primary or something like that.
Jake, if you had to do a self-portrait of yourself, what would you say as a player, but also as a person?
As a player, I always strove and still strive to be the person who just outworks everyone else. That like for me growing up, I don't never watched too much traditional sports, but I learned about for me it was Kobe Bryant in the NBA, and his mentality of just outworking everybody, just practicing longer than everybody, working harder, doing everything from outside training, anything that might give you just a little edge, and all it takes is like effort and dedication, then you do that. And that's how you compete. That's how you win, by working harder than other people. And that if you observe that goal, then eventually you will end up being a better player, and you will end up being, the best player. So that was always my mindset as a player, really, is to outwork my opponents and playing in a consistent way where, you win for the right reasons. Because you've put the work in, because you've become the better player, through years and years of dedication, and, you've built the right type of team that is winning for the right reasons. Like that's always been sort of my goal as a player. As a person, is a more difficult question, I think, because I think so much of my identity is as a player, right? Like with esports, you kind of, I feel like you give your whole life to the game if you really want to be one of the best. That's kind of something I learned, I think, especially from the Korean players, that that's how it has to be if you if you want to be the best, right, you have to give everything. There's no other players are going to make huge sacrifices. So that's just par for the course. If there comes a time where you don't want to make the sacrifice anymore, then you can't really expect to be, the best of the best. That's sort of when your career will reach its peak, is when you no longer, want to make those sacrifices and make that effort. So I don't know, as a player, I think, or as a person, I think I mostly identify with my esports career as a player, and stepping outside of that, like to do casting, was definitely an interesting experience for me because it was so different.
So it means that you were the person, a competitive person, or it means that you are the player and then you become that person in the time?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both, right? Like I was always a competitive person growing up. And then, for me, making a career in esports was like a dream come true. I dropped out of college because I got the opportunity to play for the Houston Outlaws, in the inaugural season. And I just felt like, I can't mess this up. And for me, that means like give everything, like go, absolute all out, give all your potential to succeeding. I think I'm just a person who kind of defines their life by their work. Like, I think if I were to do any job, I would end up, doing it almost completely, right? Like, being, trying to be the best at whatever I would do. So I think, yeah, like in some ways I was already, a competitive person who loved playing video games, but then in pursuing a career in esports, I went further and further down that path. And, now I expect to probably work in esports the rest of my life.
You said that one of your example is Kobe Bryant. Did you play basketball or any other sports before video games?
No, actually, I never really played traditional sports. The one sport, I guess it's sort of a sport that I always did growing up, was rock climbing. So, it's a very individual sport, and, it's not necessarily, you're kind of competing with yourself, unless you're at a very high level, then you're doing a real, quote unquote, real competition. But, there's many people in the climbing community who don't compete properly, but it's still, something that takes a huge amount of dedication. So, for me, that was what I did growing up. Team sports I did when I was younger, but I sort of lost interest as I was going into high school. I was playing, already playing games like TF2 competitively, and I think that's where my competitive instincts were getting channeled, even in like high school and stuff like that. But I still look up to traditional sports figures, because I think those are the people I can most relate to in terms of being in a competitive discipline, and making sacrifices, and pushing yourself to be your very best.
And what would you have done if you didn't make it to esports?
Oh, I really don't know, actually. I was studying economics in school. I guess my other interests, sort of, that probably would have guided me would be, working with nonprofits, or working with young people. I always liked working with kids. I feel like I can relate to kids pretty well. So I think I would have done something in like a nonprofit space, or working with young people somehow. My parents are in advertising, so maybe I would have gone down that track, as another option. I really don't know. Like for me, like even just what I'm saying is such a wide array of options. I think I was, even in like high school, was hoping I could make it as an esports professional. And the other options were more, didn't feel as real to me because of, having that one overriding goal.
Jake, the second time we met, it was in Paris during the 2018 World Cup qualifiers, but you were not there this time as a player, but you were there as a caster. What memories do you keep of this event in Paris?
Probably one of my biggest memories is, since we were casting for the English language broadcast, we were in like a side room from the main event, still close by. And I don't think the event hall was, that huge, right? There must not have been, I'm not sure, I can't estimate actually how many fans were there. But I remember, like, based on the scale of the crowd from the other room, I mean, you would have thought the arena were 10 times bigger with how passionate and like loud the crowd was. So I remember just thinking, like, hearing the crowd, a few walls away from them, and just thinking, like, wow, it sounds like I'm at, a soccer stadium or something. It's just like incredible how passionate the fans are. And for like, yeah, so I think that was probably my biggest memory. Is just how intense and passionate the fans were about the game, and how much energy that gave to like the broadcast and the playing, and it was pretty exciting.
And that was not too much frustration to not be on stage.
I don't, it doesn't bother me actually. I think the reason I don't mind playing on LAN, or I don't the reason I like it, I think, is that it doesn't I don't even notice it when I'm playing the game. Like when I'm focused in the game, you know, I hear the crowd, so obviously I know there's a crowd and I know there's lots of people watching, but I don't feel it. Like it doesn't change anything for me. So I think casting, I sort of see it as just like a totally separate endeavor. Like for me, it's you know, I'm rather than like, you know, rather than being the star of the show, you're telling the story, you're, you know, presenting the narrative, and you know, helping fans to understand what's going on. And so for me, it just felt like a totally different role, and which was also exciting for me too, because I had never really, you know, had a professional career in anything except esports, or except playing, right? So to do casting for me was to prove to myself like, well, there's other options for me, you know, because obviously no one's going to play their entire life. It's not realistic. So, you know, you need to think about the future. And for me, casting definitely seems at that moment, or, you know, from trying it at the World Cup, felt, you know, like this can be rewarding too. It's very different. It's not as intense as playing, where, you know, there's like this binary result and you win or you lose. And I mean, there's really nothing that can match that level of intensity, but casting has its own rewards and its own excitements. Yeah, so I think that for me, it was realizing, you know, hey, that's not so bad. Like, you know, playing is fun, obviously, but casting is unique and also really enjoyable.
Yeah, and we're going to come back on your OWL experience as a caster. But first, I'd like to talk about Jake, the player. And to start with your first OWL season with Houston Outlaws, you finished 7th out of 12. What do you remember?
Probably the biggest memories of that season overall would be like having such a great start, starting off so well and successfully, and then sort of like slowly crumbling as the meta shifted away from us. So that was definitely a pretty painful way to go down. But in the end, you know, we had lots of bright moments. You know, we had a good time. For me, it was like awesome to you know, I'm from San Diego originally, so for me, Los Angeles is really not that far from home, but far enough for me to really be excited about really properly living my own life. I think, you know, when you're in college, living away from your family, it's, you know, you're an adult, but it's sort of you know, not complete, right? You're going to school still, you know, it's there's a lot less responsibility on you, I think, than when you're sort of an adult living your life and you know, working. So for me, it was actually pretty fun to be able to sort of like go off into the world and have that be your first job, like proper job, I guess, besides from, you know, doing dishes in high school and things like that. But yeah, so my overall memory is of it being a really positive experience, like being in LA with all the other players and, you know, the good times. Like I feel like in season 1, everybody knew each other because we all played in the same building, right? Except maybe one of the teams didn't play there, but virtually everyone knew each other, and it definitely had a very strong community atmosphere from that, which I think probably will never be replicated again. So that was a pretty special experience.
Yeah, that was very new as well. So, and Houston's second season was much more difficult. Spree that I got here told me how well you carried the team and ended up very, very exhausted.
Yeah, I think for me, season 2 was like the revealing the flaws in my strategy, right? My strategy to just work harder when you're met with failure, you know, just redouble your efforts and just put more and more and more into the game to keep doing that same strategy as I always had. And then, you know, to be still defeated over and over again was really difficult for me, I think, like emotionally as well as mentally, just like so taxing, still trying to practice more and more and more. I stopped streaming second season just so I could practice more, because I felt my practice was maybe a little bit more effective if I was just focused on it entirely rather than streaming. Yeah, so just sort of like giving up everything, just trying to be more and more dedicated to the game, and still we were struggling as a team. Still, we weren't winning many matches. We had some really bright moments that I do remember really well and really fondly from season 2. So in the end, I don't really have any regrets, but I did feel like at the end of season 2 that I just couldn't go on. Like I just wasn't ready to face another season. Yeah, to be honest, I thought I just felt like there were things I couldn't fix, which was a new feeling for me, because I had always before felt, when I had failed or when we were losing, okay, like we can solve this problem. There's things that can be done, but I felt like it was outside of my control, which that feeling I think really made me want to make a big change, to do something very different, because I don't think I'd ever felt that way before. Like I felt powerless to affect the outcome of the match. So I think I knew I needed like a reset. I knew I needed to approach things in a new way. The honestly though, like it was such a difficult season. My memory now is like the only match I can properly remember is beating Shock when we were on the huge lose streak and they were on a huge win streak. And I remember that match is really special to me, like really emotional, because I remember we were losing, so many matches. We were a bad team, right? One of the worst teams in the league at that moment. And Shock were one of the best teams. And Dante, who had come to us and been, like a superstar for us, like one of the only really strong players on our team. I remember, just knowing like when you leave a team and join a new team, you always really want to beat your old team, because you want to prove, you were so good. You were the best player in the old team, right? That sort of thing. It's always super important, I think, to emotionally for a player to beat their old team when they get traded, like show them they shouldn't have traded you, that type of thing. And, I remember just thinking like, man, this is so brutal, because obviously we suck and Shock is so good. Dante, how must Dante feel, right, to be traded away, and now his old team is doing so well. So for me, that match was like so important to me. And then that we were able to get the win and just pull it out in the most crazy way possible. Maybe the only way we could have won, by surprising Shock with a lot of crazy strategies. For me, that was like. Maybe in the end probably made season 2 all worth it, just that match. To maybe the first time I was really wanting to win, not for myself, not for just for my teammate. Normally I care about winning myself, but in that moment I didn't, or in that match I didn't really care about it myself, just for the purposes of helping somebody else, helping my teammate win. For Dante, I didn't want him to have the experience of losing to his old team when they were doing so well, which seemed inevitable at that point, basically going into the match. So yeah, that match is like the only one I really remember. I think I've repressed the rest of the season. That's too traumatic. I can't really remember much about it besides that match.
No, but that's good. But to come back to what you said earlier, we've seen a lot of players burn out in OWL and no longer bear with the rhythm, the pressure of the competition. So. You talked a bit about that, but can you share with us your experience, your need at that moment to take a break at the end of 2019?
Yeah, I think that was a pretty difficult decision for me, because I had the perspective that, I'm not going to get another chance to come back, which I think was the most likely outcome. I think the fact that I got the chance to come back in this new role is definitely really unique, and I think very rare. I think it's certainly not expected from when I was needing to take a break. So from my perspective, taking a break meant retiring forever, which that's a difficult decision. Like I had to need a break very, very badly for me to be willing to like give up on being a professional player, which is what I felt like I had to do at that moment in order to get the break I was looking for, and the change I was looking for in my life. So that decision was really hard, but in the end, I think it was the right one. I just had to like reset and change so many like practices in my life that I think I had like gotten to where I was doing things not the best way. And it was just okay, because I could sort of like always, put another log on the fire. But then, running out of fuel and feeling that burnout, I had to sort of just change my fundamental practices, like change the way I looked at practicing and improving and things like that. And like how I live the rest of my life. So I had the bandwidth to make that type of effort required for professional play.
What you said is by the time you announced that you were taking a break from the OWL, that was for you a final decision in your head or not? I mean, to be able to come back then. You wanted to, or you just thought that it wouldn't be possible?
Yeah, I just thought that it wouldn't be possible because I think realistically it's pretty difficult. Like if you look, most players who take a year off, they don't come back, right? It's not really normal to take a year off, in esports. And that's kind of the challenge of the Overwatch League because, in other games where it's more of a tournament format, you might have, you might be able to like not participate in a tournament or two. And that could be a break. But in the Overwatch League, it's sort of you're in the season or you're not in the season. So taking a whole season off, taking a whole year off, taking a new role from casting. In the moment, I wasn't sure I would ever want to come back. But then I think in that year casting and, having a lot of free time casting, because it's just frankly a lot less demanding than playing where you have to practice or review 12 hours a day. With casting, it was like I could show up, do my job, and then it's over. And, like however long the match takes. Whereas, for a player, it's like after the match, you'd have to review after the match, and then you scrim before the match, and then there's just such a bigger magnitude of time. So even while casting, I ended up playing a lot of ranked and kind of rediscovering my enjoyment of the game, while at the same time changing my lifestyle for the better.
And so in 2020, you joined the OWL broadcast crew. What did the cast bring to you, and what do you think you brought to the cast?
For me, the biggest thing casting brought to me was just sort of a break from the intensity of professional play. Like, as far as I guess a better way to explain this to answer the other way first, what I brought to the cast is just for me was like a pure player perspective. What I wanted to share with the fans was just how does a professional player view these situations? Looking at two team comps, why is this team playing that strategy? When they're matched up with the other strategy, what do they have to do? And for me, so it's just taking all the information you get as a caster. So you get, all this information about heroes and where they're positioned and, who has ultimates and things like that. So every single fight, I'm just going to look at it from the same way as if I were like a player with cheats on who could see everything, right? Then I'll just give you that same perspective. Like I would be telling my teammates in the game, we have to do this. And, if we don't do this, we're going to lose, or we could play safe here. They have to make an action and we just have to respond. That type of a mentality. So I was, what I hope I brought to the cast was helping fans understand exactly why the players do what they do. When a player makes a mistake and it seems silly or ridiculous, typically there's some sort of motivation, or maybe they were desperate for some important, realistic reason where they kind of had to be desperate there. So for me, I think I was wanted to bring that player perspective of just being an advanced player who understands the game at a pretty high level. Helping the audience do that as well, where things that seem counterintuitive or strange, they might have pretty good reasons for them.
You were not sick of watching Overwatch game? Because sometimes when I talk with player, I said, will you watch this game? Did you watch the playoff? And they say, no. I like playing the game, but I don't like watching it.
It's funny. I think even when I was casting, I didn't watch every game. I didn't watch much more other than like big matches. I would just watch the games I was casting. So for me, I kind of viewed it the same way I do as a competitive player, where it's just like, you've got your set of matches and that's what you're focused on. And for me, I never really got sick of Overwatch, I guess. Like I've always liked the game itself, and it wasn't, I think I would have had the same decision to like need a break, whether I was a League of Legends player or a Dota player or a Counter-Strike player. For me, the game wasn't really relevant in that decision. It was just the way I was approaching professional play in terms of just trying to put so much effort in and, not really live a balanced lifestyle. That for me was the issue. So, Overwatch, I never really got sick of Overwatch. I think what I got sick of was the grind that is necessary to be a professional esports player. For me, I never really got sick of Overwatch. I still enjoyed watching it, still enjoyed casting the matches, and it feels a lot different than playing. So for me, there was like a freshness to it where, as a player, you're so focused on like the execution component, and it's so one-sided. You have so limited information. You're trying to infer so much. Whereas a caster, you kind of have too much information. You have so much. You see everything that goes on, and you have to distill. Okay, what's the most important pieces here to share with the audience. So for me, it was different enough to feel like totally new and fresh.
And did the other caster ask you a lot of questions? I mean, if you were on the French casting crew, trust me, we would spend many hours just talking, to help me to understand the game better and just to share our passion of the game. Was it the case for the rest of the casting crew?
Yeah, I know ZP and I we worked together like before the season to practice casting, to build like our flow of just the two of us working together better. And in the broadcast, one of our like main one of the best things he would do for me would be like set me up with questions that allow me to kind of explain a advanced topic or something that might have been confusing to some viewers. And yeah, we did talk about the game outside of it a lot as well. But for me, it's funny because I never really, no offense to the other casters, but I kind of have like my own thoughts about the game and like my own understanding. And even as a player, there would only like, usually I would only as far as like asking questions, like if someone asked me a question, I could like explain it to them, but I would only really ask a question of like another professional player from the perspective of like what's their perception of, the meta or whatnot. Because probably of the casters, I'm the only one who like plays the game at a really high level. So yeah, I think it was more like I would like answer any questions people ask me, and they would ask sometimes about the meta and about how the strategy plays out. But maybe it was different because of quarantine, right? We were all at home and everything. Like I never, after the first few events, I like didn't see anyone else from the broadcast team or living with Bran and Custa. Even living with them, and we don't, we never usually talked about it in the house because we're, just overwatched out most of the time after casting. But I think it was maybe just made so different. Like I think normally when you're at events, you would like talk about the games, after the games, eating dinner together and hanging out together in the hotel and everything. And I got that experience for like the first like month or two of the Overwatch League, and then just back to everyone at home broadcasting from home. So that definitely made it a very strange experience. Compared to what I had seen through like casting the World Cup and the very beginning of Overwatch League.
And were you still in touch with the players? Were you still close to them, or did you take a step back from the players? Or maybe they did?
I would say I definitely took a step back, but I still talk sometimes with players I was close to and asked them questions or got their perspective on things. But yeah, definitely for me, it was a step back. It was like, to be honest, I was just less focused on, it's hard to like keep up with a professional player. If you're not like on somebody's team in the season, I just know that like they don't really, they don't really necessarily want to be playing 20 questions. They're you're so focused as a player that I always felt like it'd be better to just let the players focus on what they're doing, at least during the season. Because that's sort of what I had, always like as a player, it's like the more focused you can be, the better. So I think maybe on top of that, it was me, from taking a step away from professional play. I also, while still like being friendly with my former teammates and lots of people I've known, definitely less cause to like, meet up with them or talk with them than before when, obviously we've been playing at events and seeing each other all the time.
And were you still a big fan of Outlaws when you were a caster?
I would say I definitely was like pulling for them because since, obviously like having a lot of friends on the team, but I was also, I have friends on other teams too. So when I'm not a player for the team anymore, I was sort of happy to see any of my friends win, anyone that I knew or was close to, happy to see them win. And even just some random players from around the league that I think are, skilled and good people, then I want to see them win too. So for me, it was much more open when I wasn't a player, right? Whereas when you're a player, you don't even think about sort of rooting for a team. It's like, that's you that you're, so there's nothing to root for, right? You are the, the person you want to win. But yeah, so I guess it definitely shifted a lot from casting, just sort of, wanting the best teams to win, like the most exciting teams, the other ones I wanted to see win in terms of the strategies or something like that.
And as you said, this years of break as a player has also allowed you to reorganize your life, to rest, to reset, to get back healthier and in good shape physically and mentally speaking. What did you work on the most? What have you done?
The biggest change I think I've made is it's just like sort of general health practices. And I guess it seems kind of simple, but it's nothing, all that special, right? Like that's sort of the biggest thing I learned, doing a lot more research about how to live like the healthiest lifestyle you can. Most of the things are just pretty simple. It's just about being consistent, about having a decently balanced diet and sleeping really consistently, getting enough sleep, and sleeping at the same times. And, how do you set up your environment so that your sleep is as good as it can be? Maybe sleep's the most important. But for me, exercise, consistency in exercise and diet and sleep, they all connect together. You can't really be successful at any one of them unless you're doing them all in tandem. So for me, those were really the changes I made. Starting to work out, 5 to 6 days a week. Eating at least decently healthy, at least like adding more balance into my diet, and then sleeping on a really consistent schedule. I think those 3 pillars were the keys to like just being able to keep up with the work level for being a professional player.
And it helps. Is it something you're trying to share with the Houston Outlaws team right now?
Yeah, I always try to, talk to my teammates about it and make suggestions, especially if anyone, asks for help or wants to be interested in it. I think for me, it's, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So I don't ever want to, force people or make them feel like pressured, because I think that will only push them away from, what I hope that, they'll want to achieve, in like living a healthier lifestyle. So, it's like, trying to be helpful and make suggestions, but also I think when you're a player and you're 19, you can get away with sort of not doing any of it, right? And just having not very healthy lifestyle practices that, for me, it worked totally fine when I was, 16, 17, 18, 19, just not sleeping that much and doing school and practicing all the time. That was fine. But then, getting a little bit older, it became more and more important, and I sort of realized that I had to do things the right way, that I couldn't get away with just sort of winging it and not having, good preparation and good plans and good strategies for my overall health, like wellness. So I think part of it is like, with now I'm maybe one of the older players in the league, actually. So it's more, I understand it's more important for me than for others. So I don't want to force them to do it, but for the younger players, obviously my opinion is like the quicker you make these changes, the better, the better off you'll be in the long run. If you're able to make these changes and to live a better lifestyle, that can only help you, no matter how old you are. But I know for the, some like 18-year-old just made it pro, that they're not, they aren't ready to like make this like huge lifestyle change all at once. So for me, it's just trying to help here and there where I can, where anyone shows interest, I want to encourage them and give them any tips I can give.
Yeah, but as you said, I think that it's quite important to do that because the esports career are very short. And so if you start quickly, then it's maybe better for the rest and to last in the esports industry.
Yeah, longevity to me is the biggest thing, right? I think it's totally possible to not live a healthy lifestyle and to be a professional player for, you're 18, 19, 20. Maybe it just doesn't matter. You can still play just as well. But if you're talking about how long you want your career to be, that's where it absolutely counts, right? There's no question that you can't live that way forever, right? Maybe a few years can be okay, but your body will make you pay in the long run, I think, so that if you don't do it the right way, in the end, it'll just hurt you. So, I do think that more players should take it more seriously. And I think things will change in esports. I think it's just a matter of time as things become more professionalized and the competition is more and more serious. People are going to look for any possible advantage, right? And I think living a healthy lifestyle is just one other advantage.
Yeah, and that's why it's good to, I think, listen to the older player, the more experienced players such as such as you. So when did the desire to play again as a professional player come back during this year?
I was starting to think about it near the end of the last season when I was casting. Since casting isn't that many hours in the week, especially without traveling, I was like still streaming a ton and playing ranked all the time and getting to like a higher skill rating and rank than I had even been when I was a professional player. To me, that was like very motivating and feeling like, well, I haven't really lost my skill and my ability to just play the game well. And now feeling like I'd sort of changed my habits in, healthy ways and adjusted in a good way, that maybe I can take that, skill and that I still have and now combine it with this like better process and better lifestyle and have more success playing professionally. But I still, wasn't sure I would really chance, right, to, like playing, have to play tryouts or something. And, would teams even want to try a player like me out who realistically I'm not going to, become so much better than I ever was, right? Like, maybe I'll continue to play consistently, but I won't like magically wake up and become the best player in the world tomorrow, since I've always put in the same high level of effort. I'm sort of like at the level that I'll be. And the best thing I can do is sort of expand my hero pool and have diverse offerings to the team. But I think it wasn't very real to me until I talked more with Matt, Cool Matt from our GM now. He's the one who suggested, a coaching role. And as we talked more, hearing about how, I was still playing the game a lot, that they figured the initial mindset was like, well, why not put me on the roster as a player? Even if I never play, it doesn't really hurt anything if I'm on the roster. And maybe, the original idea was maybe I'll play JUNKRAT for one map in the season and then there's really no consequence to being a player, really. Right. Like it doesn't affect the org at all. If I'm making more than a minimum salary player, then you just sort of subtract that value from my coaching contract and give me a player contract as well. And, there's no cost to the org and there might be some benefit even if I'm not expected to play. And that was the original mindset going in. But I think having the opportunity to play first on Brig from, playing it in GOATs, I was pretty experienced on the hero. It ended up making sense for me to play a little bit, the first tournament. And then now I'm pretty confident on Brig and Mercy and it hasn't come up to play, some of the other heroes, but I practice a lot of Baptiste. I think Crimzo is definitely better than me and plays all the flex supports. But my original mindset was, we might have a meta where, it'll be Bap Zen or something like that. And then it might make sense to have somebody like me who played DPS to play the Baptiste. So I learned that. I practiced that hero a ton. And I think maybe just practicing that much got my motivation really going again and really wanting to earn a chance to play again on any role and just doing whatever the team needs. And then for me, it was definitely pretty awesome this stage because of the hero pool to be able to, play JUNKRAT on Temple of Anubis. It's a classic role for me. So and in the end, our joking idea ended up becoming reality. So yeah, for me, it's really exciting. But in the end, I think my role is still focused on coaching, and I still feel like my most important job is to be a coach and to contribute in strategy discussion and contribute when I'm looking at individual players. I want to help them, be the best version of themselves. Even a player who's way better than I am at their own role, there might be these little tiny details in the game that I can, help them by, telling them certain positions they could play or certain ways they could use their skills. And, even though I can't possibly play, Widowmaker like Happy can, I might be able to, set up a strategy for the whole team that enables him in the most effective way possible. So for me, that's really exciting. And maybe it was always my biggest strength as a player is that like strategic aspect of the game and, reading the situation in the game, in the moment, and making the right decision as a group, maybe is like what I've always been most confident at. So in that sense, the coaching role is a natural progression.
And what did you miss the most?
From playing when I was a caster, you mean? Or?
Yeah, from playing professionally.
I mean, definitely the most is just playing on stage, winning on stage. There's nothing like playing in front of a crowd, or even if you're here and during quarantine, like playing and there's it's a super high stakes match, and when you win in that sort of super high pressure scenario, it's just incredible. I mean, there's nothing that gives you that same high of winning under pressure, because how sad you'll be when you lose and how excited you are when you win. I mean, the variance between the two possibilities is just ridiculous, right? You'll be depressed thinking about quitting, or you'll be over the moon, thinking you're the best team ever and you'll never lose again, So it's that kind of variance, that kind of like, it feels like such a risk and such a thrill. There's something about that you can't capture, I think, elsewhere in life, at least for me. That kind of intensity and motivation. So that's definitely what I miss the most. It would be like the intensity and the excitement of winning.
And playing again in OWL, for you, it had to be for Houston Outlaws, or could it have been somewhere else, Jake?
For me, as much as I love the Outlaws, I think it could have been somewhere else. But the thing about the Outlaws is that they're the team that believed in me, with especially Matt, our GM, like still believed in me and thought that I could add value in this role. And I think probably it would have been a lot harder to convince another team of that who I didn't already know them really well. And my history with the Outlaws, and I mean, it's just too perfect of a fit in the end. I think like theoretically it could have been another team, but for me it was almost a foregone conclusion that it would be the Outlaws if it was going to happen at all. I said I'd like to think that I could play for any team, but realistically, my best chance was always with the Outlaws. It just makes so much sense with my history and the organization and everything. I didn't play any tryouts at all for the team. Well, because I mean, my original mindset was coming in as a coach, and even at the time, in the timeline of me joining the Outlaws, was like every team had like completed their roster at that point. I think it was pretty far beyond sort of the normal window when you're planning your roster. You're doing tryouts. I think the Outlaws tryouts were completely done. They had signed all their players and were, in a good spot. But of course, like it's different for me than a normal player because of the hybrid role with coaching, where, it's not necessarily like, even if I never play, for a lot of players, if you never play, you're pretty worried about your career, right? Because in the end, it's like, if you don't ever play, then, the team is thinking, do we really need this player? But as for me, it's like, even if I didn't play at all, I still feel like I can contribute a lot from a coaching perspective. So for me, anytime I get to play is like icing on the cake. It's extra. It's above and beyond, and just like an awesome experience I get to have. And I think maybe now I see it in a different light because of my role, where I'm just happy I get the chance to play if I play. And for me, the role I'm in or what I need to do is irrelevant. I'm just going to do my best for the team and just be grateful that I get to be there at all.
Are you a different player today that you were before?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. By a long shot. I think maybe I was like more motivated by individualism and ego in when I was starting playing professionally. Wanting to like be the best and to outperform and always start every game, and that type of a motivation. Whereas now I think have a much like more broad perspective of wanting the team to be successful overall and trying to find some way I can contribute, which I think is for me is a much healthier mentality, because it's one that you can it's less extreme, right? Where, if you have this ego mentality, the only thing that matters is winning. And I guess still the only thing that matters is winning. But for me, I can, if I'm the one making the game winning play, or I'm just the one who, helped us figure out what comp to play that week. I mean, for me, both of those things are important, contributing. Whereas before, when I was just playing, if I wasn't starting, even if we win, it would be, a little bit bittersweet, because I would think, oh man, I wish I ended up being the best choice for the team to play that week. I wish I was a better player, so, I could make us even better than we are now. Whereas now I don't really see it that way. If I don't play, it's just like, then I'll have to contribute in another way, and I can put my effort into coaching, and maybe I can find some new strategies for us, or maybe I can help make a game plan to deal with the enemy team and what they're good at. So yeah, I think it's been a really big change for me.
And it's working for Houston. I mean, it's working for Houston. It's working as well for you. I remember when you were announced, I had this talk with my community saying, is that a good idea for Houston to bring back Jake? And I was like, absolutely, because I hope you won't be mad at me, but as you said, you're not the best player in the world. You're not the best mechanically speaking, but I think that you are one very professional, disciplined, experienced. You're an intelligent player and you're mentally strong. After a year of break, you've learned how to work on your mindset and everything and that's priceless, I think, for a team. You remind me soon in France.
Yeah, I mean, for me it was a really exciting opportunity, and I'm just glad that Houston believed in me as well.
There is, I mean, no risk. The only one who's taking risk, I think, was you. Were you stressed to come back as a pro player? Were you sure of yourself? Were you confident in your level, your ability? Of course, to bring something to the team, but to be ready to play, because the level has increased a lot.
Yeah, I think for me, in the end, like one thing I still haven't left behind, I guess, and maybe I'll never leave it behind, and I think kind of is a reality of playing professionally, is like the online ranked ladder, which I think is so interesting because you don't see that in traditional sports. There's only the matches, there's only the professional play. But in esports, it's like, I've had players I've had previous teammates who just don't play that much ranked. And, those were always the players who just weren't that good. The players who didn't practice enough, didn't do enough outside of the scrim to continue to improve. They're the ones, when you see these 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-old players coming up into the professional scene, the person who loses their spot is the person who isn't out there playing with them and isn't out there, grinding ranked. So for me, the fact that I was still pretty high rated on ranked ladder, within top 30 on DPS, and then playing support, getting top 10 in it was last season or season before on online. So for me, it was still being able to get that ranked, that for me is the validation of okay, I am still at a fundamental level able to be a strong player. And maybe I'm not maybe I won't be the rank 1 player, right? But as long as I can be at the level of professional play, equivalent to my opponent, let's say if my mechanics can be equal to the average player in my role, then I feel like I can be a better player than them by, like you said, these other things, right? I can add better strategy to the team. I can make a better call in the moment in the team fight. React to the opponent's strategy when we haven't seen, make an adjustment, and those types of things for me are what are the ways I can sort of rise above. And just making sure, for me, one thing is important is no matter how good you are at calling, right, you have to be at least decent at the game, right? You can't be a liability, and that's how my mindset now is. Maybe now I think one thing that's changed from a direct gameplay perspective is I'm a much more conservative player now, I think, than I was before. I guess I was always kind of a conservative player of wanting to minimize risks and play in a safe style. But playing DPS before, I would be very willing to take big risks and go on the flank and make a play and just go take the risk, spin the wheel. But now I think my mindset is very much how can we have a perfect strategy that has no risks in it, which isn't perfect. And I think that mindset maybe suits the support role a little bit better. Not wanting to take risks, letting your teammates take the risks, supporting them when they take the risks. But your play style is sort of the bedrock of the team, is the one who's just don't die. That's how I think of the main support role, really. I mean, you can make plays, but the most important thing is don't die. Anything you do extra is only as good as you never die, right? If you died making that play 1 out of 10 times, it just wasn't worth it all 10 times. So in a way, I think the support role is kind of highlighting that, as just trying to minimize errors.
And do you enjoy it, support role? Because you tweeted lately, Mercy is lit. You seems to enjoy the character, or it's just for fun?
Yeah, no, I actually do enjoy playing Mercy. I think even when Overwatch came out, I actually played a bit of Mercy, like in the very beginning when everyone just played every hero and stuff like that. Still exploring. I mean, I knew I would like play DPS, I guess, because I had played other games and been like played like damage role in TF2 and stuff like that. Even though only one healer in that game, but still, I sort of knew I would want to play DPS mostly, and just sort of only in that moment. But obviously when the game came out, I just played everything, and I remember enjoying Mercy, thinking there's a lot of like min-maxing on the hero, and you can sort of push the limits, and now I think since Mercy got reworked whatever a year or two ago, the Valkyrie is so exciting. You kind of have like the most powerful movement of like any character in the game, and there's a lot of like advanced movement text on Mercy, which is another aspect I always enjoyed of games, is like the movement. And Mercy's a hero who I think is almost all movement. That's basically all you do, is have good movement and make good decisions. So yeah, I sort of have learned to appreciate the hero more than I think I had before. And in a way, I think when you're playing a professional match, it just doesn't matter what you play. It's going to be a good time, because the game takes on such a different character. It's not really about you anymore in a professional match. It's about the unit and the group and what the collective will do. And whether you're DPS, tank, or support, it's always, how can I fit in with this overall strategy? And for me, that's the joy of esports and competing, more so than just sort of playing the game normally.
Yeah, but that's kind of a privilege to be able to play DPS, because you're still playing DPS and support at the same time. You're kind of the Violet of Houston Outlaws, right?
Maybe Val's a bit better than me, but I appreciate the comparison. I think I honestly didn't expect to play DPS at all this season, but I just had a feeling that with this hero pool that JUNKRAT could work on Anubis, and it worked really well in scrims. We were winning everything, and luckily Reaper is not the most difficult hero in the game when we play attack. So it's been fun, and I've been playing both roles in ranked now, and just kind of I think I've relaxed a little bit from feeling like, wow, I have to play only support so I can like get my level up on support. Now I feel like, okay, let's keep playing all the heroes I can play, and just not be so focused on the next match. I feel maybe now I have a little bit more comfort to just do what's best for me as a player, improve anywhere I can improve, and see how maybe improving on one role can help you in another, right? And like how mechanics can transfer and things like that, especially on a hero like Batiste, who has projectile aim, hit scan aim, and in many ways has like a lot of the similarities to the DPS heroes and the mechanics that you use on those heroes. So yeah, I think for me, I've sort of been slowly broadening my horizons and opening my mind as to what's possible. But yeah, it's still different, I think, than being a typical player, since I'm so focused on coaching. But in a way, I think I always had a similar type of role when I was a player, even before, where I always wanted to contribute to strategy, and I always wanted to, help the team overall be the best it can be beyond just what I'm doing in my role.
You talked about JUNKRAT. I have to ask you the question. Do you like to be called JKRAT or not?
I don't know if I like it or dislike it, honestly. It's so it's funny to me, I guess. I mean, I think in a way I'm like proud that I could like make a name for myself on a hero. I think that's one thing that in esports is like, there's just sometimes like player who is so associated with like a certain hero or champion in different games that they're, sort of associated with it forever. And for me, that is like a point of pride in the end, that I was able to take a hero who was sort of treated as a joke, I think, for most of the game, and have, when it got buffed obviously hugely, and to be the one to kind of, I don't know if I'd say discover, but I would say like popularize it for a professional scene. There's always people one-tricking JUNKRAT in ranked and things like that, but I was the one to bring it out in the professional stage and make it work and shape the meta. So I think overall I can be really proud of that aspect, that that I was able to show the professional scene that it's viable, that it can work, and So for me, it's I don't know, JKRAT I think is funny, but yeah, to be associated with a hero, because I had like innovated on it and shown people a new possibility on the hero. I guess that is what I love about games like Overwatch, that you can be creative, you can approach things in a new way, you can play different strategies than other people and make them work if you can play them in the right way. And for me, I guess that's what JUNKRAT kind of symbolizes, is that element of freedom in the game, that there might be strategies yet undiscovered that are actually good.
But I've heard that JUNKRAT is not your favorite hero.
I mean, it's hard. I don't think I have a proper favorite hero. I think like there's so many heroes in Overwatch that are just completely unique in the FPS space that are so fun to play. I think realistically my favorite hero changes week to week, patch to patch, meta to meta. Like I think heroes like Doomfist are just incredibly fun with the movement. Genji, the upper limits of potential are like unreachable. Heroes like Pharah dueling in the air is such an awesome experience for projectile players, like sort of a pure 1v1 a lot of the time.
Yeah, Jake.
Even I think heroes like Batiste and Brig are fun. Can't go wrong.
But I'm talking about soldier. You said that you've chosen 76 as your jersey number because it's your favorite hero.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I guess for me, 76 was like, was an awesome hero because that's maybe for me it was like where I sort of proved myself at the World Cup, was playing mostly 76, so it was like a special memory for me to play that hero. And 76 was also important to me, being at the intersection of like hit scan and projectile, where the Helix rocket is like such an important element of the kit, so that sort of favors projectile players, finishing off those kills, but then you need to have good tracking as well to use the primary, so both aspects are really important. For me, it was awesome because I'd always been a projectile player in a lot of different games. And, even coming to Overwatch, I was like, okay, I'll just play the projectile heroes. And then, Soldier was kind of a way to broaden my horizons of, having a bit of an advantage at the beginning with the, being good at using the rocket, and then learning as playing the hero more and more and more, how to have good tracking aim and good hit scan aim. So for me, it was like a great experience to master that hero because it sort of gave me these skills that allowed me to continue to expand my hero pool. I mean, there was a time where I just like would never want to play a hit scan hero, for any reason, or never want to play Widow or Tracer. And I think Soldier was like the hero maybe to start breaking down those divisions in my mind and make me realize, I can play all the heroes. I just have to like put the work in and learn, just like I did to be good at Soldier.